Grandpa, you have to stop my mom's wedding right now. My 15-year-old grandson's desperate whisper still haunts me, because he was absolutely right about the monster my daughter was about to marry. I'd tried warning Celeste about Darius, his expensive lifestyle, his vague job, the way he dismissed our family, like we were obstacles to remove. But she chose him over me, delivering an ultimatum that shattered my heart. Support my choice, or lose me forever. So I stepped back, stayed silent, and watched this stranger take control of my daughter's life. Everyone thought I was just a bitter old man who couldn't accept change. They had no idea I was quietly gathering evidence that would expose the truth about who Darius really was. What my grandson discovered at that wedding reception would save our family from complete financial destruction, and prove that sometimes a grandfather's protective instincts are the only things standing between his loved ones and disaster. But let me take you back to where it all began that September evening when I first met the man who nearly destroyed our family. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The expensive black BMW sitting in Celeste's driveway stopped me cold. My daughter drove a 10-year-old Honda, worked 60-hour weeks at her marketing job, and lived in a modest downtown Asheville apartment. Whose luxury car was this? Dad. Celeste opened the door before I could knock her face glowing with an excitement I hadn't seen since her college graduation. Perfect timing. I have someone very important for you to meet. The man rising from my usual armchair was everything I wasn't expecting. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Celeste's monthly rent. His smile was practiced political, the kind that never quite reached the eyes. Dad, meet Darius Kellerman, Celeste announced, practically vibrating with joy. The man I'm going to marry. The words hit like a physical blow. Marriage, I'd never even heard his name before tonight. Mr. Mercer? Darius stepped forward, hand extended, but when I reached to shake it, he smoothly redirected the gesture to adjust his expensive watch instead. The snub was so subtle, so perfectly executed, that Celeste missed it entirely. But I didn't. Please sit anywhere, Celeste gestured around her small living room. Actually, I'm quite comfortable here, Darius said, settling back into my chair with the confidence of ownership. For 15 years, every time I visited that blue armchair by the window had been mine. Kieran looked up from his homework at the kitchen counter, catching my eye with an expression that said everything. During dinner, Darius dominated every conversation. When I mentioned my 32 years as a structural engineer, he waved dismissively. Engineering's so different now. All that traditional knowledge is pretty much outdated. Kieran shifted uncomfortably in his seat, glancing between his mother and me. What type of consulting do you do? I asked, genuinely curious about how a consultant could afford a BMW and that Rolex Submariner gleaming on his wrist. Business optimization, Darius replied vaguely. Helping companies streamline their operations. It's quite technical. Dad, Celeste interrupted quickly. Darius has been so patient with all my questions about his work. We don't need to interrogate him. Interrogate, I'd asked one simple question. As the evening progressed, Darius's comments grew bolder. Traditional fathers need to learn when to step aside, he announced while Celeste was in the kitchen. Let the next generation make their own choices without interference. The message was clear, stay out of our business, old man. When Celeste returned with dessert, Darius immediately shifted back to charming host mode, complimenting her cooking, discussing wedding venues, with the enthusiasm of a man planning the social event of the season. We're thinking Blue Ridge Mountain Resort, Celeste said dreamily. It's expensive, but Darius says I deserve a fairy tale wedding. I watched this man who'd been in my daughter's life long enough to propose marriage, but not long enough for her to mention him to her father. Something about his confident possession of her apartment, his dismissal of her family, his expensive lifestyle paired with vague income explanations. Every instinct I'd developed over 68 years was screaming danger. As I prepared to leave, Kieran approached quietly. Something feels wrong about him, Grandpa, he whispered, glancing toward the living room, where Darius had his arm possessively around Celeste. We'll talk soon, I promised, squeezing his shoulder. At the door, Darius shook my hand properly this time, his grip just a fraction too firm, his smile just a shade too triumphant. Looking forward to having you and the family Blaine. I'm sure we'll get along just fine. Walking to my car, I turned back once. Through the apartment window, I could see Darius watching me leave, that political smile, replaced by something colder, more calculating. He'd won this round, and he knew it. But I'd been protecting this family for 42 years. The game was just beginning. The morning sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows should have been comforting, but I couldn't shake the unease from the previous evening. I'd barely slept my engineer's mind, cataloging every red flag I'd observed about Darius Kellerman, the expensive BMW, the territorial behavior, that calculated dismissal of my handshake. I was on my second cup of coffee when Celeste's Honda pulled into my driveway at 8:45 a.m. She slammed the car door with enough force to rattle my windows, and I knew this wasn't a social visit. "We need to talk." She burst through my front door without knocking her usually perfect hair disheveled dark circles under her eyes. My daughter looked like she'd spent the night preparing for battle. "Good morning to you too, sweetheart. Coffee." "Don't." She held up a warning hand. "Don't pretend this is a normal visit, Dad. You hated him. I could see it on your face the entire evening." I set down my mug carefully. "I barely know the man, Celeste." "Exactly?" Her voice cracked with emotion. "You made up your mind about Darius before he even sat down, just like you did with Jason." The comparison hit like a slap. Jason, her first husband, the accountant, who'd seemed so stable until I discovered his affair. That was different. "Was it—" She began pacing my living room hands, cutting through the air. "You questioned everything Jason did, made me doubt every decision. And when it fell apart, you acted like you'd been right all along. Jason was cheating on you, Celeste, with his secretary. So what?" The words exploded from her. "At least he wasn't some monster you painted him to be. Darius is different. He loves me, Dad. He makes me feel special wanted." I watched my 42-year-old daughter unravel in my living room, and my heart broke. "I just want you to be happy." "No, you don't." Tears were streaming down her face now. "You want to be right. You want to control who I love, who I marry, how I live my life. Well, I'm done with it." She stopped pacing, turned to face me with a determination that reminded me of her mother. "Darius asked me to marry him last week. We're planning the wedding for next month." "Next month?" The timeline made my stomach clench. "That's very fast." "See?" She pointed an accusatory finger at me. "There it is. The judgment. The disapproval. I won't let you destroy my happiness again, Dad." "I never destroyed. Support my choice or lose me forever." Her voice was deadly quiet now. "Those are your only options. I'm 42 years old. I don't need Daddy's permission to fall in love." The ultimatum hung between us like a loaded weapon. I'd raised this girl, walked her down the aisle once before, held her when that marriage crumbled. Now she was asking me to choose between my protective instincts and my relationship with her. "Celeste, please, just slow down. Give yourself time to—" "Time for what?" "Time for you to poison me against another man who actually cares about me." She grabbed her purse from my counter. "I made my choice, Dad. Darius makes me feel alive again. He sees a future with me." I thought about Darius's expensive watch, his vague job description, the way he'd claimed my chair, like he owned it. But I also saw my daughter's desperate need to be loved, to believe in fairy tale endings at 42. "I love you, sweetheart." "Then prove it." She was at my door now, keys jingling in her trembling hands. "Be happy for me. Support my wedding. Or accept that you'll lose me forever." The door slammed behind her with finality that echoed through my empty house. I stood at my kitchen window, watching her Honda disappear down the mountain road, knowing I'd just lost the first battle in a war I hadn't even realized we were fighting. But sometimes, the most strategic move is a tactical retreat. If I pushed harder, I'd drive her straight into Darius's arms. If I stayed silent, maybe I could find another way to protect her. My phone buzzed with a text from Kieran. "Can we talk today?" Something's weird. Maybe my grandson had noticed things I'd missed. Maybe there was still time to save my daughter from whatever game Darius was playing. I just had to be smarter about it. The hardest part of strategic warfare is knowing when not to fight. For 5 days I maintained complete radio silence with Celeste, letting her ultimatum hang in the mountain air between us. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. My engineer's mind understood that sometimes the strongest structures are built by knowing when to yield. Thursday afternoon, Kieran appeared at my kitchen door, school backpack, still slung over his shoulder, his young face creased with worry. "Grandpa, we need to talk about Darius." I poured him a glass of milk and settled across from him at my kitchen table, the same spot where I'd helped him with homework since he was 7. "What's on your mind, kiddo?" "Something's weird about him. He acts totally different when Mom's not around." Kieran's 15-year-old honesty cut straight to the point. "Like really different." "How so?" "Yesterday, Mom went grocery shopping and left me doing homework at the kitchen counter. Darius started going through her desk papers. You know, the ones with bank statements and stuff. When he saw me watching, he pretended he was just tidying up. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice level. "Anything else?" "He has 2 phones, Grandpa." Kieran leaned forward conspiratorially. "Who needs 2 phones? And he takes the second one out on the balcony for calls like he doesn't want anyone hearing. 2 phones? In my engineering days, I'd seen enough corporate espionage to know that dual phones meant dual lives. One for show, one for business you didn't want traced. Have you heard any of these calls? Just pieces. Something about timeline and assets and the old man's situation. I think he meant you. Friday evening brought more intelligence. Kieran had developed the observational skills of a natural detective, cataloging Darius's behavior with the precision I'd once used for structural assessments. He asked Mom weird questions about your house, Kieran reported during our regular check-in call. How long you've lived there, whether you have a good pension if you own it outright. Mom told him it wasn't his business, but he kept pushing. What did your mother say? She made excuses for him, said he was just curious because he cares about family. Kieran's voice carried the frustration of a teenager who could see what adults refused to acknowledge. But it felt wrong, Grandpa, like he was taking inventory. Saturday morning, I suggested we meet at Riverside Park, neutral territory, where a grandfather and grandson could have a normal conversation without raising suspicions. The October air was crisp leaves turning brilliant reds and golds against the Blue Ridge backdrop. I need you to promise me something, I said as we settled on our favorite bench overlooking the French Broad River. Keep watching, but stay safe. Don't let him know you're paying attention. You think he's dangerous? I watched a hawk circle overhead, patient and calculating. I think he's not who he pretends to be, and men like that can be unpredictable when they feel cornered. So what do? We gather information, document everything, build a case. I squeezed his shoulder. You're my eyes and ears in that apartment, Kieran. But if anything feels unsafe, you call me immediately. Sunday evening, I sat in my home office with a yellow legal pad systematically documenting every red flag we'd identified. The expensive lifestyle with vague income, the territorial behavior, the rushed marriage timeline, the financial probing, the dual phones, the secretive calls. Individually, each item might have an innocent explanation. Together, they formed a pattern that made my blood run cold. Darius wasn't just interested in marrying my daughter. He was conducting reconnaissance on our entire family's financial situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. Dad, we'd like to take you to dinner tomorrow night. Peace offering. I stared at the message, understanding immediately that this wasn't Celeste's idea. Darius was ready for the next phase of whatever game he was playing, and somehow I suspected that peace offering was going to come with a price tag. Time to see what the man really wanted. Celeste's call came at 6:30 p.m., her voice carrying forced brightness that reminded me of her childhood attempts to smooth over broken vases. Dad, Darius, and I would love to take you to dinner tonight. A peace offering. Mountain View Tavern at 7. Mountain View Tavern, our place, where I'd taken her for birthday dinners since she was 8, where Kieran and I still went for Saturday morning pancakes. The choice felt deliberate, calculated to invoke family memories and emotional leverage. That sounds nice, sweetheart. But as I drove through downtown Asheville's evening traffic, I knew this wasn't about peace. This was about whatever Darius had been planning during his reconnaissance mission through our family finances. They were already seated when I arrived, Darius, rising with theatrical courtesy to pull out my chair. He'd positioned himself strategically, back to the wall clear view of the entire restaurant, controlling the table dynamics, like a chess master. Blaine, so glad you could join us. His handshake was firm, confident the grip of a man who believed he held all the winning cards. Wouldn't miss it. Within minutes, Darius had commandeered the evening. He ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's weekly groceries, making a show of examining the label and discussing vintage with our server like he was auditioning for a sommelier position. Only the best for family, he announced, filling our glasses with flourish. Celeste beamed at his performance, but I caught the slight tension around her eyes. Even she seemed to recognize the display was excessive for a Tuesday night dinner. So Darius, I said as our appetizers arrived, Celeste mentioned you're planning the wedding quickly. When you know, you know. His smile was practiced professional. Life's too short to waste time on lengthy engagements. Besides, Celeste deserves a fairy tale celebration. Speaking of the celebration, Celeste interjected, glancing nervously between us, we've been looking at venues. Blue Ridge Mountain Resort, Darius said, leaning back with the satisfaction of someone dropping an expensive name. Absolutely stunning location. Perfect for photographs. The kind of venue that creates memories to last a lifetime. I took a careful sip of the overpriced wine. Sounds lovely. Of course, quality comes with a price. Darius's tone shifted subtly, becoming more serious, more businesslike. The venue alone is $12,000. Then there's catering flowers, photography, music. We're looking at 15,000 minimum for a proper celebration. There it was, the ask, delivered with the precision of a man who'd done this before. A woman should feel like a princess on her wedding day. He continued, reaching over to squeeze Celeste's hand. Surely you want Celeste to have a memorable celebration. The manipulation was textbook perfect. Public setting to prevent scenes. Emotional pressure through Celeste's happiness. Financial assumptions based on his reconnaissance. Appeal to parental pride and love. Around us, other diners continued their normal Tuesday evening conversations, unaware they were witnessing a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Dad, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important, Celeste added quietly, her voice carrying the weight of our recent ultimatum. I know things have been tense between us. I looked at my daughter, 42 years old, successful in her career, reduced to asking her father for money to fund a fairy tale orchestrated by a man she'd known for 2 months. The sadness of it hit me harder than anger. 15,000 is a significant amount, I said carefully. For a man of your means, hardly insurmountable. Darius's confidence never wavered. Kieran mentioned, you own your house, outright have a solid pension. This is an investment in your daughter's happiness. Kieran had mentioned no such thing, but Darius had clearly been fishing for financial information through multiple sources, building his case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. I could feel the restaurant's ambient noise fading as the moment crystallized. Say no, and I'd validate Celeste's accusations about sabotaging her relationships. Push back, and I'd drive her further into his arms. But agree. I'll help with the wedding costs, I said quietly. Darius's victory smile was immediate and graceless. Wonderful, I knew family would come through. Celeste reached across the table to squeeze my hand, relief flooding her face. Thank you, Dad. This means everything to me. But as Darius launched into detailed plans for flowers and music and open bars, I noticed something he probably thought I'd missed. When he'd pulled out his phone to show wedding venue photos, I'd glimpsed a second device partially hidden in his jacket pocket, just like Kieran had reported. The evening ended with Darius picking up the check with magnanimous flourish, as if spending my future money on overpriced wine was his personal gift to the family. Walking to my car, I felt like I'd just bought myself a front row seat to watch my daughter's financial destruction. But sometimes the price of staying in the game is letting your opponent think they're winning. At least now I knew what he was really after. The Blue Ridge Mountain Resort looked like something from a fairy tale magazine, all white silk and autumn foliage, exactly the kind of venue a 42-year-old woman dreams about for her second chance at happiness. My $15,000 had bought Celeste her princess moment, complete with mountain views and golden October light filtering through the trees. What it hadn't bought was a seat in the front row. Family seating is reserved, the wedding coordinator explained apologetically, gesturing toward the back rows where distant cousins and work colleagues were settling in. The front is for immediate family only. I found myself in the fourth row, watching my daughter's wedding from the same distance as her dental hygienist and college roommate. The symbolism wasn't lost on me or anyone else who knew our family dynamics. At 2 p.m. sharp, the ceremony began. Celeste looked radiant walking down the aisle, her dress catching the afternoon light like spun gold. For those precious moments watching her face glow with joy, I almost convinced myself I'd been wrong about Darius. Almost. He played his part perfectly at the altar. The devoted groom, the successful businessman, the man who'd swept my daughter off her feet. Only someone watching very carefully would notice how his eyes kept scanning the crowd, during the vows, cataloging faces, assessing the audience like a performer, calculating his next move. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The kiss was theatrical, lasting just long enough for the photographer to capture multiple angles. Around me, guests applauded with genuine warmth, celebrating what they believed was a love story with a happy ending. The reception began immediately, cocktails served on the resort's panoramic terrace. That's when I first noticed Darius's associates, 3 men in expensive suits, who'd arrived separately, and positioned themselves strategically around the venue. They didn't mingle like normal wedding guests. They observed. Blaine! Darius appeared at my elbow with champagne flute, raised his politician's smile, bright as stage lights. Time for the toast! The crowd quieted as he tapped his glass, all eyes turning toward the new groom. Celeste beamed up at him, radiant in her happiness, completely unaware of what was coming. Friends, family, thank you all for celebrating with Celeste and me today. His voice carried clearly across the terrace, confident and commanding. This has been a perfect day, made even more special by the support of those who truly matter. A pause. His eyes found mine across the crowd. Here's to new beginnings and leaving old prejudices behind. The words hit like a slap, delivered with surgical precision. Some people said we were moving too fast, that love at our age was foolish. But when you know, regardless of what naysayers might think. The applause was scattered uncomfortable. Guests glanced between Darius and me, recognizing the public humiliation for what it was. Even Celeste's smile faltered slightly as she processed her new husband's words. To Celeste, Darius continued, raising his glass higher, for having the courage to follow her heart instead of listening to those who would keep her trapped in the past. I felt every eye in the venue assessing the family drama playing out before them. My engineering colleagues from church, Celeste's work friends, neighbors who'd known our family for decades, all witnessing my public dismissal on my daughter's wedding day. But as I stood there maintaining my dignity while being systematically humiliated, I noticed something else. Kieran had positioned himself near the terrace doors, and his young face was creased with alarm. One of Darius's associates was deep in conversation with Martha Henderson, Celeste's closest friend, asking detailed questions about family finances. Another had cornered my neighbor Tom, inquiring about property values in our neighborhood. The third was photographing the gift table with professional efficiency. These weren't wedding guests making small talk. They were conducting surveillance. Grandpa, Kieran appeared at my side as the toast ended, his voice urgent and low. Something's really wrong here. Those guys Darius brought, they're asking everyone about money. About you, about Mom, about who has what. I watched the three men work the crowd with practiced efficiency, each targeting specific guests, gathering intelligence with the precision of professionals. Whatever game Darius was playing, it was bigger than just marrying my daughter for her modest savings account. Much bigger. As the afternoon sun began its descent behind the Blue Ridge peaks, casting long shadows across the wedding reception, I realized we weren't just celebrating a marriage. We were watching the final preparations for something that would destroy far more than one family's happiness. The question was, what exactly were we walking into? By 6 o'clock, the reception had shifted into full celebration mode. The band was playing, guests were dancing, and Celeste looked happier than I'd seen her in years. But something about the associate's professional surveillance had left me on edge, watching shadows, where I should have been celebrating my daughter's happiness. That's when I noticed Kieran slip away from the crowd, heading toward the terrace doors, with the overwhelmed expression of a teenager who'd had enough of adult social performance for one day. I gave him space. 15-year-olds needed air breaks at formal events, but when 20 minutes passed without his return, my protective instincts kicked in. I made my way through the reception crowd, nodding politely at guests who offered condolences about the seating arrangement and toast situation. The terrace was quieter, with small groups of guests enjoying the mountain evening and the golden hour light filtering through the Blue Ridge peaks. I spotted Kieran immediately, not where I expected him to be. He was crouched behind a large decorative planter near the venue's smoking area, his face pale with shock, listening intently to something I couldn't hear from my position. Following his gaze, I saw Darius and his three associates, gathered in what they clearly thought was a private conversation. Voices low, but animated. Even from a distance, their body language screamed, "Business meeting, not wedding celebration." I moved closer, using other planters and architectural features as cover my engineering. Mind automatically calculating sight lines and acoustic advantages. What I heard made my blood turn to ice water. Marcus Kellerman has 3 warrants out for his arrest. One of the associates was saying, but Darius Kellerman is clean as a whistle. Different social security number, different credit history, completely separate identity. My legs nearly gave out. Darius wasn't just a con artist. He was a professional criminal, operating under a false identity. Phoenix went perfectly, Darius replied with casual satisfaction. 68,000 from the widow, plus her late husband's life insurance payout. Seattle netted 42,000 before I had to disappear. This one should be even better. What's the timeline? Another associate asked. Honeymoon starts tomorrow. Once we're in Mexico, I'll have complete access to her banking information, credit cards, everything. She trusts me completely now. Darius's laugh was cold, calculating. The old man's pension and house equity are the real prize, though. We're talking serious money. The old man, he meant me. How long before you clean them out? 2 weeks maximum. By the time they realize what happened, I'll be long gone with a new identity. Again, I felt sick. This wasn't just about Celeste's modest savings. They were planning to destroy our entire family financially. Everything I'd worked for over 32 years as an engineer. Everything I'd saved for Kieran's college fund. Everything. That's when I saw Kieran rise from behind the planter, his young face a mask of horror and determination. He'd heard everything, too. He moved through the reception crowd like a boy on fire, weaving between dancing couples and chatting guests with desperate urgency. I followed, my heart hammering against my ribs, knowing we were racing against time itself. Grandpa! Kieran reached me near the gift table, grabbing my arm with trembling hands. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of everything we'd just discovered. Grandpa, you have to stop this wedding right now. The words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were unexpected, but because they confirmed my worst fears. My 15-year-old grandson had just uncovered a criminal conspiracy that would destroy everything our family had built. What did you hear? I asked, though I already knew. His real name is Marcus Kellerman. He's wanted by the police. He's done this before, Grandpa. In Phoenix and Seattle. He marries women and steals everything they have. Kieran's voice cracked with the weight of adult knowledge no teenager should carry. They're planning to take all of Mom's money, all of your money, everything. Around us, the wedding reception continued in blissful ignorance. Guests laughed and danced and celebrated what they believed was a love story, with a happy ending. But Kieran and I stood in the eye of a hurricane, knowing that in less than 24 hours, my daughter would be on a honeymoon with a professional criminal who planned to destroy her financially and disappear forever. We have to tell her, Kieran whispered urgently. Right now, before they leave tomorrow. I looked across the reception toward Celeste, radiant in her wedding dress, dancing with the man who planned to rob her blind. The man I'd helped fund with $15,000 of my own money. This was the moment of truth. Everything we'd suspected, everything we'd observed, every red flag we'd cataloged, it all led to this single terrifying realization. My grandson was absolutely right. The hardest conversation of my life had to happen in the next 5 minutes, before Darius noticed we were missing from the reception and came looking for his new bride. Celeste, I need to speak with you privately, right now. My daughter looked up from accepting congratulations from her college roommate, radiant in her wedding dress, champagne flute in hand. Dad can't wait. I'm having the most perfect day of my life. It's urgent. Family emergency. Something in my tone must have broken through her wedding day euphoria, because she followed me without further protest, weaving through the reception crowd toward the venue's bridal preparation room. Behind us, the party continued in blissful ignorance, guests dancing the band playing Darius, holding court with his criminal associates. The preparation room was blessedly quiet, all white silk and mirrors with a small desk equipped with internet access for last-minute wedding coordination. I closed the door behind us, my hands shaking as I turned to face my daughter. Celeste, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear. She set down her champagne wedding joy, fading into concern. Dad, you're scaring me. What's wrong? Kieran overheard something about Darius, about his real identity. What are you talking about? Her voice carried that familiar defensive edge, the same tone from our kitchen confrontation weeks ago. His real name isn't Darius Kellerman. It's Marcus Kellerman. He's wanted by the FBI for fraud, sweetheart. He's done this before in other states to other women. Celeste stared at me like I'd lost my mind. That's impossible. Dad, I know you don't like him, but making up criminal accusations on my wedding day. I'm not making anything up. I moved to the desk, opening the laptop. Look up Marcus Kellerman, 45 years old, wanted for fraud. I won't do this. She turned toward the door. I won't let you poison my wedding day with paranoid fantasies. Celeste, please, just look. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize publicly and never question your judgment again. Something in my desperation must have reached her, because she paused, hand on the doorknob. Slowly, reluctantly, she returned to the desk. Her fingers trembled as she typed Marcus Kellerman fraud warrants into the search engine. The first result made her gasp. A police mugshot filled the screen, Darius's face staring back at us under harsh booking lights, the same charming smile now looking predatory and cold. Oh no! Her voice was barely a whisper. This can't be real! But it was real. Horribly, undeniably real. More search results loaded FBI wanted posters, news articles about victims' court records spanning multiple states. Phoenix widow loses life savings to marriage scammer. Seattle teacher victimized by professional con artist. FBI manhunt continues for Marcus Kellerman accused of targeting vulnerable women. Celeste's legs gave out. She collapsed into the desk chair wedding dress pooling around her like spilled cream, staring at the screen with growing horror. He told me his business consulting took him to different cities, she whispered, scrolling through victim testimonials. Phoenix, Seattle, these are the same places. I knelt beside her chair, wanting to comfort her, but knowing she needed to see everything. Keep reading, sweetheart. The pattern was identical in every case. whirlwind romance, rushed marriage proposal, expensive wedding funded by family honeymoon. In Mexico, complete financial destruction within weeks. Listen to this, Celeste read aloud, her voice breaking. Kellerman typically targets recently divorced women with assets using romance and rushed marriage proposals to gain access to finances before disappearing with new identity. She looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks like black tears. Oh God, this really is him. What have I done? You fell in love with someone who lied to you professionally. None of this is your fault. But I defended him against you. I chose a criminal over my own father. Her voice cracked completely. I made you pay for our wedding. $15,000 to fund my own destruction. Outside the preparation room, we could hear reception laughter and music, the celebration of what everyone believed was a love story, with a happy ending. We're calling the police right now, I said, reaching for my phone. He won't hurt anyone else. My hands shook as I dialed 911, giving the dispatcher our location and explaining that we had a wanted fugitive at a wedding reception. Officers were dispatched immediately, ETA 15 minutes. What do we do now? Celeste asked, wiping her eyes with tissues that left white streaks across her wedding dress. We go back to the reception and act normal until the police arrive. Can you do that? She straightened in her chair, and I saw steel in her spine that reminded me of her mother. I have to. If he realizes we know, he might run. Standing up, she smoothed her wedding dress and checked her reflection in the mirror. The radiant bride was gone, replaced by a woman who just discovered her fairy tale was actually a nightmare. Dad, she said quietly, meeting my eyes in the mirror. He was right. The words from our story's title finally spoken with the weight of terrible truth. Now we just had to survive the next 15 minutes without letting a professional criminal realize his perfect con had been exposed. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours, but we managed to return to the reception and maintain our facade. Celeste was magnificent, greeting guests, accepting congratulations, dancing with her new husband while knowing he was a wanted criminal. The strength it took to smile and laugh while her world crumbled around her reminded me exactly why I was so proud to be her father. At exactly 7:50 p.m., I spotted two plainclothes officers entering through the venue's main entrance. They moved with professional discretion, scanning the crowd like experienced hunters who'd found their prey. The lead detective approached our family group near the cake table badge discreetly displayed. Excuse me, are you Mr. Darius Kellerman? Darius turned with his politician's smile intact. That's me, officer. I hope we're not too loud for the neighbors. Wedding celebrations can get enthusiastic. Sir, we'd like to speak with you privately about a matter of identification. Of course, happy to help. Darius followed them toward a quieter corner of the reception hall, still playing the cooperative citizen, but I caught the subtle tension in his shoulders the way his eyes swept the room looking for exits. The conversation lasted exactly 3 minutes. I watched from across the room as the officers showed Darius something on a tablet, probably his own mugshot. His confident posture crumbled like a house of cards. Ladies and gentlemen, the lead detective's voice carried clearly across the now quiet reception hall. Marcus Kellerman, you're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement across multiple states. The name hit the wedding guests like a physical blow. Marcus, not Darius. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. The band's music trailed off into confused silence. That's when Darius's survival instincts kicked in. He bolted toward the terrace doors, wedding guests, scattering like startled birds. But the second officer was already moving. The tackle happened right in front of the gift table, sending wedding presents scattering as they hit the polished floor. The wrestling match lasted maybe 10 seconds before Marcus was face down on the venue's elegant hardwood hands, cuffed behind his back, his expensive tuxedo rumpled and torn. You have the right to remain silent, the officer began, but Marcus was screaming over the Miranda rights. This is impossible. I'm Darius Kellerman. I just got married. His voice cracked with desperation and rage. You've made a mistake. But there was no mistake. As they hauled him to his feet, his eyes found mine across the reception hall, burning with fury and hatred. You did this, old man, he screamed, struggling against the handcuffs. You destroyed everything. The accusation hung in the air for a moment, before Celeste stepped forward, addressing the stunned wedding guests with remarkable composure. I need you all to know what really happened here today, she announced, her voice carrying across the silent reception hall. The man I married is a wanted criminal who was planning to steal my money and disappear. My father and son saved me from the worst mistake of my life. Some guests gasped. Others pulled out phones to record, but most just stared in stunned silence as the fairy tale wedding revealed itself to be something much darker. I walked over to Kieran, pulling him forward. This young man is the real hero I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. He overheard the truth and had the courage to speak up when it mattered most. Kieran blushed but stood straighter, accepting handshakes and praise from guests who were still processing the evening's dramatic revelation. As they led Marcus out in handcuffs, his 3 suspicious associates had already vanished, probably out the back exits the moment they'd spotted police cars in the parking lot. The reception hall fell quiet, except for the soft background music that felt absurdly cheerful after such drama. Wedding decorations that had been beautiful an hour ago now looked like props from a play that had ended badly. Celeste removed her wedding ring and handed it to one of the officers. "Evidence," she said simply. Then she walked over to where Kieran and I stood watching through the windows as Marcus was loaded into a police car, his shouting muffled by closed doors and bulletproof glass. "Is it really over?" she asked. It's over," I confirmed, putting my arms around both my daughter and grandson. "We're safe now." The police car pulled away, carrying Marcus back to face justice for his crimes. Around us, wedding guests were gathering their things, offering support, expressing amazement at the evening's revelations. But I was focused on my family. 3 generations united by crisis, stronger now than we'd been in years. Celeste looked up at me with tears in her eyes, but they were tears of relief, not sorrow. "He was right," she said quietly, echoing the words from our story's title. "You were right about everything, Dad. I should have listened to your wisdom from the beginning." Outside the venue windows, the sun had set behind Colorado's mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. A beautiful ending to an ugly day. Justice served, family protected, truth revealed. Sometimes that's all a grandfather can ask for. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children isn't permission to make their own mistakes. It's the wisdom to help them avoid disasters disguised as dreams. Love isn't always saying yes. Sometimes it's having the courage to say what needs to be heard, even when it costs us everything we hold dear. That night taught our family that experience has value, that intuition earned through decades of living deserves respect, and that sometimes the youngest voices carry the most important truths. Kieran's bravery, Celeste's strength in facing reality, and our willingness to fight for each other when it mattered most. That's what real family looks like. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between keeping peace and protecting someone you love, please hit that like button and subscribe. Share your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to trust your instincts about someone when everyone else thought you were wrong? Your stories matter, and they help other families facing similar challenges. Remember, wisdom isn't about being right. It's about loving someone enough to risk being wrong and strong enough to stand by them when the truth finally comes to light.